Hello everyone. Obviously recognise most of the names actually in this session, which is always nice. A few names that I don't recognise. That's equally good. Welcome. Hello. I'm gonna switch my camera off now. Obviously, you don't need to see me here. Just nice to at least say hello on camera. So I'll just switch my camera off. Okay, well, after having switched the microphone off rather than the camera, I'm back in, and hopefully everyone can hear that fine. So I just put that slide up there while people are arriving. You can see a lot of people from all around the world, different time zones, some people at the beginning of the day and some people at the end. Good to see you all here. We're obviously going to repeat this session later as well, so if you do fall asleep halfway through, you can catch the later version or indeed watch the rerun. So let's make a start. I thought I would begin by getting some audience participation here, just finding out a little bit about you guys. So using the amazing new option in Big Blue Button for live polls, I've just created a couple of slides here to get some indication from the audience about where we are in terms of using Moodle in a mobile context. And I guess, knowing many of the people in this room, I'm not surprised. I'll just publish that result. Hopefully you see this result straight away. There you go. That most of the people here will be familiar with iPads and tablets and using those both for themselves and with teachers and their students. Okay, so a lot of people using Moodle on a tablet. What about using Moodle on a smartphone though, which is clearly a different kettle of fish, a different animal? Okay, so the results are coming through. I'm going to publish them. I know some people are probably not answering or multitasking and so on, but I'll publish that again. A very high result for people that are using Moodle on a smartphone. And I guess the reality is it's because we have our smartphone with us 99% of the time. So it's a bit like the Facebook and Twitter. It's right there. It's so easy to use that we tend to use it, right? So let's get a bit more interesting here. How many people have actually used the Moodle mobile app itself rather than just a browser on your device? Okay, let me just publish that. Yeah, hopefully people are seeing the results published in at the bottom there of the slide. I can certainly see it. I'm guessing everyone else can see it as well. So, okay, 80% of people here have used the Moodle mobile app, which is great. Not everyone, and there could be very good reasons for that. It didn't work when I tried it. Well, that's a fine reason, Maureen. I have to say that's an excellent reason. Okay, let's just change the focus a little bit and think about you as a teacher rather than a consumer of a website of Moodle courses. If you've used the Moodle mobile app, and those 80% of people that have, would you consider yourself to be competent with it and happy with it? I certainly struggled with it at first to understand what it was doing and why, and what I could do and what I couldn't do. And if I just publish those results there, Okay. And I kind of expected that, I guess. I expected most people to say, yes, I've tried using the Moodle mobile app, but I wouldn't rate myself as highly competent because I don't quite understand what's happening. I don't understand why sometimes I'm being sent to a website. I don't quite understand why that, as Kim says, it is a different, as Teresa says, sorry, it's a different experience to using a browser. And as we know with Moodle now, we have these fantastic responsive themes, which means that using a Moodle course or Moodle site with your mobile phone browser is really quite a nice experience because it moves everything around. It doesn't just shrink it in size. There's this real intelligent theme-driven design happening. So, it doesn't surprise me that most people do not feel competent or highly competent with that mobile app. And of course, that would translate probably to even greater numbers for our students, wouldn't it? Logically, if they're trying this with their lower level of experience with Moodle and so on, they're going to find it even harder. So that's something that we have to be conscious of, I guess. And then I think this is the final question. Using this smart polling and big blue button, which is fantastic. I also wondered how many people have actually designed a course thinking specifically about how mobile users would access that and would use it and what their experience of that would be. Now, just let a few more people answer. Got about 20-ish people here, so I'll wait till it gets to around 15. And then I'll publish that there. Okay, so what we can see from this is that most people here have not actually designed a course with mobile access specifically in mind. We may think, I won't upload massive files because I think mobile users will struggle to download those. But that's probably as far as it goes. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this session is basically me sharing our experiences as we've developed a Moodle mobile MOOC. And that's going to run this year. That starts 1st of July, which is, just looking at my calendar, about 5 weeks away. I'm also going to, so as well as sharing sort of our experiences of developing this, I'm also going to share some of the things that we encountered in terms of the design of the courses and the environment and testing that we did. And I've used a phrase there to say, we need to produce these to a commercial level, and that means something different to a teacher creating a course for their students in a school, for example, or a university professor putting some notes into a course area for their degree students. When we're creating courses, even though this is a free MOOC, we still have to operate as an organization at the highest commercial level. So that's something I'm going to touch on. What I'm not going to do today is look in detail at the content of the MOOC for two reasons. Firstly, if anyone wants to look at some of that, we can sort of screen share towards the end. And the other thing is, of course, if you want to know the content, if you want to learn, and go through this experience, then you just join the MOOC and do it for free. What we're actually doing today is talking about how we got there, or how we are getting there, in fact. Just quickly about ourselves, so you understand where I'm coming from as the one of the people working at a Moodle partner. Roughly a third of what we do is training, both on site and a lot via our Moodle Bytes site. About 1/3 of our work is hosting and technical support, and about 1/3 of our work is around content development or customization, theming, consultancy. So that, in very broad terms, we're quite we're quite spread out in terms of the work we do as a Moodle partner. Roughly 50% of our work is national and 50% is international. And we have a very kind of flexible, fluid team, including full-time, part-time, and consultant contractors who are spread out. Obviously, a lot of people here in New Zealand, but also over in Europe and the US. So a very fluid kind of organic organization as a Moodle partner. But that just gives you some idea of how the balance of our work and our focus actually stands at the moment. So we're going to run a Moodle mobile MOOC. And kind of the first question we should ask is, why would we do that? And really the main reason is that we've been a Moodle partner since 2006, that should say, of course, since 2006. So 2016 is actually our 10-year celebration or 10-year birthday, which is quite amazing. Makes me feel a little bit old in some ways. It's certainly been an interesting, from a business perspective, it's been very interesting to create an organization that makes money, because we're a business, we have to make money, to create a business that makes money from supporting something which is completely free. I mean, people do not need a Moodle partner, right? Anyone in the world can download Moodle, install it, teach themselves, create courses. They don't need anyone else. Not in the same way that if you buy a car, you'd want to take it to service with the person that sold it to you, and then there's that maintenance, and you take it to an engineer or a mechanic. With Moodle, of course, everyone's free to do whatever they want. So it's quite challenging to create a business model around that. But not everyone needs to pay for being a partner. Correct? Yeah, not everyone needs to use a partner. That's absolutely true. So it creates huge challenges. We have to rise above, I guess, mediocrity and try and do things that are wonderful. So this Moodle Mobile MOOC is part of our 10-year celebration, and it's obviously completely free. And it's out there really to share with people that we've worked with, and people that don't know us, can get an idea of the sort of thing that we do. So that was the picture that you probably saw as we were joining, and that in fact is one of the main images from the front of the site, which we're using. So I've broken this down really into a couple of different topics, and the first one is around the technology. So we were initially going to create a Moodle mobile course and put that within our Moodle Bytes site because it's well known and people find it, and then they could access a free MOOC. And there are lots of courses in there for teachers and developers and designers and multilingual, English and French and Spanish. But we actually decided kind of quite early in the development process that it would be far better to have a dedicated site for this. It would give us more flexibility and more sophistication in the way we set things up. And because it's a MOOC, then we realized we were going to have different factors and different drivers for this site than a standard training site. So that's why we actually established, and you can see the URL there. It's just a subdomain, mobile.moodlebytes.com. It's a completely separate site living under that URL. So technology, it's a MOOC, but what does that really mean? Well, there's a number of things. At a basic level for us, we've actually set a limit of 1,000 people on this MOOC. We didn't necessarily feel that we'd want 5,000 people in there. We didn't know whether we could actually handle that number of people successfully in a meaningful and responsive way. So we've put a limit on there of 1,000 people. That would generally mean an average of around 42 people logged in an hour, and we're obviously using just ballpark figures here and very generalizations. When we look, however, at the registrations so far where people are from, unsurprisingly, New Zealand is very popular. And then the US, France, UK, India, they were the top 5 last week when I looked at it. But of course, that actually means if I think of a working day as being kind of 8 hours, right? So kind of 9 to 5 is an average working day when people may be accessing the site. And even that is a statement that could be challenged. We might suggest that more people would access this site in their own time anyway. But if we combine those, the biggest chunk there, we would find if you actually look at the world clock and you work out what the biggest amount of people in a working day is, it would cover America through to Europe. And just take in India. So that would actually mean that we can expect at least 100 people to be logged in per hour during busy periods. And obviously, as a Moodle site, that gives you some indication of the kind of instance or the CPU power that you're going to need for that site to actually run effectively. We also had to think about, okay, it's a mobile MOOC. What does that mean? Well, it means that people are hopefully going to be accessing this 99% of the time using a smart device, a tablet or a phone. And the way we've designed the course means that they will be accessing small chunks of information, very lightweight, but maybe very often, which perhaps isn't the way a traditional classroom course or support course would be used, where people maybe log in for an hour and go through quizzes and access resources and read lessons. The pattern of access with mobile is very different, and it's very much small, quick, fast, Just using some analytics, you can see at the moment, leading up to the MOOC, right, 95% of people are accessing that site using a desktop device. A smaller number, obviously, accessing with mobile. We would expect that, obviously, on day one, when the course starts on the 1st of July, those figures are going to flip dramatically, and we'll see a lot more mobile devices and hopefully very few desktop devices. The desktop count will probably be the course team, myself, actually doing some changes or small edits as we go using a desktop. So if we look at the how we plan the site out, how that actually works, it's just a 4-week course, but obviously there's more in the background than just those 4 weeks. So the 4 weeks of content are basically focusing on communications, resources, activities, and media. And in this course, we are telling people to access the course only via a mobile web browser or the Moodle mobile app. Okay. But we also needed, of course, a couple of other courses in there. We needed a preparation area where we wanted people to get in and be ready to start the course on the 1st of July. So we've given them information on how to download the app, how to set it up, how to prepare. So when we start the first week, everyone's in the right place. Before the preparation area, of course, we need information on the site, which has to be available for guest access, so people can visit the site, think, yeah, this is relevant to me. Then they can join that preparation area, get ready. And then as we go through the 4 weeks, we obviously traverse from one course to the next. And at the end, there's a separate area where people are able to collect their badge and their certificate. And there's some finishing off exercises and so on in there. And then, of course, I'm sure like most of you Moodle practitioners here, there's a hidden testing category and course where we're frantically trying to solve little problems or test things out as they appear. So that's the kind of general, that's what's happening with the site itself. One of the things that we had as a driver from day one is that we wanted to do this whole project in dual language. So we're actually doing it in English and in French. So the whole experience has to work in two languages. So obviously I'm doing the English, and Jean-Marc Duché, who's over in France, is doing the French translations and the French versions. But we decided early on that we didn't want completely separate courses for the two different languages. We kind of felt that if we could keep these people together, so these two separate groups of people. So, for example, in a forum, we would want the people that were predominantly speaking French to still be able to switch to the English forum and be able to, get involved and at least read, maybe answer, maybe ask questions. So we didn't want to completely isolate the two groupings here. We wanted an ability to integrate where necessary. So we didn't go down the track of having different courses for different languages. What we've actually done is made extensive use of the language filter in Moodle. Now, if anyone's using the language filter in Moodle or has used it, you could stick your hand up in the in that little side area. Let us know. I think you can choose all sorts of things. You can raise your hand if you've used languages before, if you've used the language filter. So the language filter is just a filter built into Moodle as standard. So there are a whole range of filters in there, which are actually incredibly powerful. Some filters will do things like when you type :- close bracket, that will translate into a smiley face. So there are a number of filters, email filters. There are filters which make when you type a web link address, actually makes it an active link. All types of filters, lots of them in there. Now, this language filter, I'm sure, is used by many, anyone that's teaching languages in Moodle, I'm sure, is familiar with this. And perhaps the other group of people that are familiar with this are people who are not English speakers natively, and are actually, finding ways to use Moodle in a multilingual context. So essentially, the language filter allows you to create these very simple what's called a span. I'm just going to highlight that one there. So just using a tiny little bit of HTML, we put a span to indicate the language is English. We have our text, and then we close that span at the end. So that's no different for anyone that's done even basic HTML. It's just like putting a heading style or making something bold. You start your tag and you close your tag at the end. In that example there, we can see that we've got a span to say the following text is English. We've got news and announcements. We close that, and then we repeat that opening language, but obviously change it to French. FR is the Unicode 2-letter ISO for French. So we put that in, then we put our French language text, and then we end that span. And that works just so brilliantly. I mean, what it will do is it will detect the language that the user is in, and it will display the right text from those two options based on the language. So it's kind of pretty invisible to the end user. And for the people designing the course, once you've learned how to do that, I mean, obviously you can copy and paste it a lot as well, and then just change the two language characters. It's actually very, very quick to do once you've worked it out. Having said that, it can look a little bit complicated. as you imagine, whole paragraphs or sections of text can start to look a little bit busy, particularly if you don't read the other language. Obviously, pages of information in a different language that you're not familiar with can be sort of visually a little bit intimidating, I suppose. But it's the same thing here. We've just used the language tags and put that together. And a little note there that it would be easy to add another language. Just add the next language as Spanish, ES, and then you would have that as well. Some things don't get translated. One of the notable things is the course short name, and that is because it's really a critical value in the database underneath. So that short course names cannot be translated. We elected to use very short course names everywhere, just to make sure that even for people with rudimentary English, French speakers with rudimentary English, it would kind of still make sense. It did take a little bit of getting used to. You can see there that, for example, in the description field, you see both languages, and obviously if you switch that to HTML view, you'd actually see what's going on there. There are two tags underneath for each language, but it can be a little bit confusing the first time you see that. You're not quite sure what's going on, but it's actually fine once you realize. We decided to use groups then rather than splitting courses. And we decided to create groups based on the languages and then to restrict things via that method. So we wanted topics to only be available to certain languages. If I explain that visually, it kind of makes a bit more sense. So we had our main information course, the preparation area that people then join using a group key. And then we have a news forum where we can interact with the people from the two different languages, two different language groups. And when they enroll in a course, there are basically each topic is replicated, once in English and once in French. And each is only visible, obviously, to the correct group. So if you've used groups and I'm going to explain that a little bit. So each group has a enrollment key. And that then means that when we look at the course, we actually have forums and messaging and messagerie. So we have each topic repeated twice. The first one available only to English, the second one available only to French, Francophone. And the way we achieve that, if you've never seen this before, is that we edit a section. So we take a section that's been put together in English, we edit that. In there, at the bottom, we add a restriction. And there are a number of restriction options. We're going to choose group because we want to restrict things to either the French group or the English group. Now, you might ask why we didn't do language. I'll come on to that. And we then set under that restriction that the student must be part of the group English or French. Right. And that will then set that topic to be just available for them. But, and this was a kind of key bit that we discovered, and it wasn't immediately obvious, but there's a little I next to that group option, and there's a tooltip that only appears when you put your mouse over it, and it says if you click this I, it will actually completely hide this section from people not in this group. So it doesn't just grey it out and say it's not available, which is a kind of, a typical thing that you might see in a course. It doesn't just make it grey and say this isn't available. It completely hides it. So if you set up the topic for English as part of the English group and then click on the I, it hides it from the French group. And you take the next section, you repeat the process, you just alter that section and say only visible to people in the French group, and hide it so the English people don't see it. And of course, that's a heck of a lot quicker than doing this on individual resources. So if you've got 6 topics in your course, you have 6 in English, you copy those, 6 in French, and then you just quickly edit the visibility of each section. So you're only making 12 of these operations rather than trying to hide individual resources and activities and labels. You don't need to do any of that. You can just work topic by topic, section by section if you're in weeks. And that's an example of what you'll actually see, as a teacher with your view. You'll actually see that it's set to, so this page is set to English, hidden otherwise, and the copy below is set to Francophone, hidden otherwise. And it actually works perfectly with users. We did consider there is a plugin which allows you to restrict by language. And that was another option that we thought about and tested at the beginning, but it didn't quite work as well with the Moodle mobile app. There was some issues around that, so it's certainly something that we're going to keep an eye on and look at in the future. And it may work if you're doing something similar, but for us, that didn't quite work with the way we were doing things. Just a note as well that front page, the first page, and the sort of guest area, we did have to think of that slightly differently, because of course people, when they're just reading the site as a guest, they haven't got a language set on their profile. They're just a guest. So we had to do things slightly differently on the front page. I'm not going to go into the detail there, to make sure that everyone could still see something in their language. Just a slightly different approach for that guest and front page area. We did an awful lot of testing, and in fact, this is one of the interesting areas as we worked through this, because we want to produce something which is perfect and is in line with our commercial courses, even though this is just a free MOOC. We did lots of testing. So as the kind of main developer of the content, I was logged in at any time as 4 users. I was logged in as a teacher, as myself. I was logged in as a student who sometimes had his language set to Spanish, just to see how that affected someone coming in with Spanish on their browser or their operating system. We also had a French student, and of course I'm logged in as admin at the same time, so that I can make changes to anything that isn't working because of site settings. So I'm in 4 browsers constantly while I'm developing this course. I'm also using 4 different browsers constantly. So I'm using a combination of Safari and Firefox and Opera, and the browser called Software Iron, which is actually like Chrome, which Google is based on. Google Chrome is based on another system, and Software Iron is basically the same thing, but without all the spying and information that Google take from you. And then the other main aspect of testing is that we had to do this on multiple devices. So I'm developing the course majority of the time using a MacBook Air and a MacBook Pro, but I'm also testing out. Anyone else with sound issues? Just Tabitha? Okay. So we're also using an iPad Pro. I've got this beautiful new iPad Pro, and some of those drawings you saw earlier, I've just been doing those with the pen, and it's absolutely wonderful. But also testing with an old iPad 1 as well. We're testing on an iPhone 6, which is pretty much up to date, and an old iPhone 3. I've got a cheap Android tablet. So we're testing on lots of devices constantly as we are developing. Yeah. And then, of course, last week, something else changed, which was that Moodle 3.1 was released this week. So we've actually we decided that we wanted to update the MOOC site for this. So, and that's because the Moodle mobile app 3.1 is also released. In case you're not aware of this, the Moodle mobile app now has a release at the same time as the Moodle version. Okay, so it's a couple of days later usually, and that's totally understandable. But each time there is a new Moodle, so 3.2, Moodle 3.2 will be out in, was it December? And the Moodle mobile app 3.2 will also be out at the same time. So that makes it far easier for people to keep in step as well with those things. And we have updated our site for two reasons. The first one is, and this is a really, really big thing, I think, is that quizzes are now supported in the Moodle mobile app. So instead of when you go to a quiz in the Moodle mobile app, it says, you know, this isn't supported, go and do it in the browser. Now it's possible to do the quiz right there in the Moodle mobile app. And that, I think, is really, you know, fantastic and brilliant. You're as well as having the app in 3.1, your Moodle site must also be 3.1 to support that. How did you translate the quizzes from Guido? Translate them into French? If that's the question, then Jean-Marc does all the translations into that language. And Russell, is it possible to do the quiz offline? Yes, I believe it is. You can do the SCORM objects offline, and I think you can do the quiz offline. There is actually a documentation page. If you go to Moodle Docs 3.1 and you look for the release notes of the Moodle Mobile 3.1 app, it actually explains what is supported in there. And I don't think every single question type is supported, so I'll come on to that. Okay. We also found, while we were designing this MOOC, we also found something that I was really, really pleased with, which is a plugin called Mobile App Restrictions. So it's a plugin that you download and you add it to your restrictions, availability, I think it is, that your availability options. And that allows you to then, on any individual resource or activity and so on, you can actually say, this is only available to people if they're accessing this using the Moodle mobile app, or this is only available to people if they are not using the Moodle mobile app. So where you have a resource that perhaps doesn't translate really well for whatever reason, from a browser environment to the Moodle mobile environment, what you are able to do is to create a second resource, which is, you know, similar or an alternative, and then to set the restrictions on each so it is delivered only to the correct device, either people using a browser or people using the Moodle mobile app. And that has been something that we've used within this course design for the main MOOC, you know, quite obviously. So I really recommend that. If this is the kind of area that you're working in, that is a fantastic plugin. Yeah, really, really good. So I think I've just said all that, really. Yeah. It gives you a lot of flexibility if you're having to design for both environments, but some things don't translate particularly well. Yeah, absolutely. Look at that plugin. So what now? I have to say, I mean, it's really interesting sharing this because this is something we haven't even run yet. This literally starts in 5 weeks' time on the 1st of July. We are still learning right now. We're still making some design changes. An obvious one that you'll probably have realized by now is that as we've updated the Moodle site to 3.1, and I've updated the Moodle mobile app on my phone today to 3.1, we now have to just go back and look at some of our quizzes in the course, because now they can be taken on the mobile device, but not necessarily every question type is supported. So we might have to go back to each quiz and check whether we've used, drag and drop questions that aren't supported, for example, and just refactor those quizzes, or potentially use the mobile app restriction plugin and say, let's deliver this quiz and this quiz experience to people using a browser, but let's deliver this different quiz to people using the Moodle mobile app, for example. No decision on that yet. We're still talking about that. If this goes really well, we are potentially going to run the MOOC again at the end of the year. It would still be part of our 10-year anniversary. It'll still be within that 2016. And one of the things that I'd be really keen to do is to actually put a third language in there and have everything translated to Spanish. There's a huge Moodle Spanish-speaking community. I interface with a number of people on a number of different levels. I'm always amazed at how hungry the Spanish-speaking world is for Moodle, and how well they do, considering all the documentation and coding is initially in English. The amount of energy that goes into that Spanish world is and Moodle is fantastic. So we'd like to make it trilingual for the later run if we do that. So any volunteers to do Spanish, please get in touch. So I'm now happy to answer any questions. I think we'll probably run out of time. I'm happy to answer questions, or I can screen share if anyone's got anything specific that I can answer. The URL, I think I mentioned that earlier on, but that's the URL for the MOOC site. Please let people know about it. It's something that we are going to really enjoy doing. It's completely free. It's going to help people get a lot more familiar with that Moodle mobile app in particular and understanding it. We're going to have Juan, who obviously develops the Moodle mobile app, leads that team over in Spain. He's going to do a little interview, little video at the beginning as well, talking about the direction and where it's going. So that'll be useful for people. But yeah, do get involved. Do let other people know about this via Facebook and Twitter and all the normal kind of channels. I'm happy to take questions or comments. I mean, we're 5 weeks away. We still have time to improve this thing. And if you've looked at this and thought, well, I've done something similar to that, but the way I did it was this and it worked really well, please, post in the forum that's associated with this course and give us some new ideas. And at the very least, try and make time to be a part of it. And, those 80% of people we saw at the beginning that don't feel highly competent with the Moodle mobile app, we would hope to totally turn that figure around during these 4 weeks of this MOOC and have a whole raft of people that are very happy with the differences and very happy designing courses for that and understand it. So any questions that you've got, you can pop those into the chat. I'm going to look through this now. Teresa, would there be a different quiz in the French section? Yes, there would be a different quiz. Excuse me. Yeah, it's a copy of the quiz. So basically, we have two categories in the question bank. We have the English, which is developed first, and then we replicate those questions into French, and then it's translated into French. So two different quizzes, but exactly the same questions. Guido, how long will the course be open after it's finished? It will be open. It's a 4-week event, so it will be open for 4 weeks. Each week will be open, once it's opened, and stay open until the end. And at the end of those 4 weeks, I think people will have 1 week to collect their certificate and badge. And then it will finish, and we'll reset it and probably re-engineer it a little bit if we are going to do it in November as well. Do I expect people to add content? We have things like, we're demonstrating assignments. So we might have an assignment that asks people to upload a photograph from their smart device or via the mobile app, for example. but the content of the MOOC is designed by us. Yeah, Kim, would be great to see you in there, Kim. I'm sure you'll have lots of really useful observations for us, and find some of my my spelling errors and so on.
Thank you, Stuart. While people are thinking of other questions, I'd just like to take this opportunity again to thank you so much for taking time to present this. It looks really exciting, and I know that probably a few of these people are going to be coming on in there as well to learn more about designing in mobile. And I really do like the way that you've used the multi-lang filter, because I don't think many people know about it, and it's really good also to see those extra restriction plugins. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thanks, Teresa. Great to have this chance to just show people what we're doing, and very interesting for me because it's something that we haven't actually got to yet. So there's still time to improve it and change things. If people have got questions afterwards, obviously just post those in the forum. I'm happy to answer those. One last question there from Guido. Other MOOCs are open for much longer after finish to be able to be shared. Great. Yeah, Guido, go off and do one of those MOOCs. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so I think that's more or less the hour. Thank you, everyone. Great pleasure to have you here. Hope that's been useful.